Welcome to the big show. I'm Paul Zeise. We're obviously late today, and that's probably my fault. I had a miscommunication, so if you want to blame somebody, blame me, but that doesn't mean that we can't still get to the point where we talk about the things we need to talk about and talk about, obviously, the Steelers. We're going to talk about some Pirates stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, the Pirates really need to figure out, do they really want to rebuild or do they not want to rebuild? We'll figure that out. The Steelers, when it comes to what they're going to do at quarterback, I know there's lots of different opportunities for the Steelers. And actually, there's still some basically one of these things where I would tell you that the Steelers have some chances to maybe improve their quarterback position, even if they don't get Aaron Rodgers. And I know that that's one of those things where we talk about Aaron Rodgers a lot. I get why we do that. And frankly, hopefully he does ultimately sign because it makes it a lot easier. But the reality of the situation is there could be a lot of different scenarios that still are out there for the Steelers to go out and get. And I think that it's one of those things where the Steelers have to decide if this is going to be a year where they just sort of have one of their, what I would call it, bridge years, where they just kind of figure out, okay, listen, here's the bottom line. We need to really go out and make sure that we are good enough for this year to win games and not worry about the next year or whatever. But here's the thing I would tell you. It's important to me for the Steelers to also sort of turn every rock over that they can possibly turn. And so it's one of those things where there's a number of guys who seem to be coming available here and there. One of them now is Will Levis. And when I say Will Levis, I'm going to tell you, the thing about Will Levis that I would tell you that I'm not sure if I really understand is that I don't understand why the Titans would be giving up on him yet. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I wish it did, but it doesn't, because from the standpoint of Will Levis is a guy who I think probably still has an opportunity to be a good player, but I just don't know that you're ready to give up on him because of his upside. However, if he is available, let's talk about what the Steelers could do. Because I think that's the discussion that we need to have is what can the Steelers do if Will Levis is actually available? Could they trade for him? Well, if they're going to trade for him, what exactly is it going to cost? That's what I want to know. The Titans are probably not going to give up with, give up on him for anything more than like a second or a first. And the reality is, if it's going to cost a first or a second round pick, I don't think I would do that. I just don't think it's one of those things where it makes sense for the Steelers to trade a first or a second for a guy who, let's face it, I'm not sure where he fits anymore. I mean, when he first came out, I thought maybe this guy's good enough. Really. Maybe he's good enough to be the guy they need him to be. I just don't know that he is. We've seen enough of him to understand this. Arm strength is without a question good enough. Physical attributes, without question, probably good enough. The mental part of the game, not good enough. And since it's not good enough, do the Steelers really want to part with a first or second round pick to get Will Levis? I don't think he makes you better. I really don't. And I know there's some people that believe that, still that if he's in the right system with the right quarterback coach and the right offensive coordinator and all that other stuff, he makes them better. I just don't think that's the case. I wish it was the case, but I don't. And I know we've talked a lot about a lot of these quarterbacks for, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. I get it. Now he's sort of the guy that you look at and say, there's some reports that he might be available via trade. Is he a guy the Steelers look at? I just don't think, honestly, I don't think you make yourself better or markedly better by bringing him in than you would if you had a guy like Mason Rudolph. Because Will Levis has proven nothing yet. He hasn't proven he's good enough. He hasn't proven that all of that talent he has all of a sudden is going to translate into anything more than just sort of a guy who is basically, somebody who gets coaches fired because he's just not good enough. I don't know. I'm just telling you, I'm not a fan of him. And I think that the Steelers would be better off going with Mason Rudolph or Will Howard and seeing what basically, if Will Howard is good enough, give him a shot. You drafted a rookie for a reason. You drafted him for a reason, period. And the reason you drafted him is because you think he might be good enough. And if he is, why would you give up a first and second round pick for somebody else's retread? And listen, I know that there's an idea that Will Levis has all of this upside. I just think that when you get to 3 or 4 years into the season, I don't think it's going to happen for him. I just don't. And I think that's the biggest problem that the Steelers would have with a guy like Will Levis is that I don't think that he's necessarily good enough or will be good enough. And so if he's not good enough for any of that stuff, to me, I look at it and I have to flip it through and I just basically have to say, no. It's a lot like a lot of the other guys the Steelers have been sort of, connected with. Kirk Cousins, for instance, okay? When I look at Kirk Cousins, I look at a guy who just is not good enough. He might have been at some point, but remember, this is the thing about Kirk Cousins that I think nobody wants to talk about. Kirk Cousins is a guy who legitimately, when I say legitimately, he is a guy who legitimately, in so many ways, has made hundreds of millions of dollars. And yet, at the end of the day, he's won one playoff game. He's just not good enough. And now he's got a bad will. I just look at him and say he's really legitimately not good enough on any level for the Steelers to take a shot at him. I mean, I wish he was, but I just don't think he is. And so at the end of the day, it's one of those things where I feel like we talk a lot about all these guys that are out there right now that are basically, available to the Steelers. I'm not excited about any of them. I think the Steelers probably right now are in a good enough position where they basically don't need, they don't need to take a flyer on one of these guys who's just not good enough, period. So that's where I'm at with it. I look at it. I always try and look at it objectively. And I just basically say, if we're going to be objective about it, and we're going to really try and take a look at what the Steelers need to do, Will Levis is just like all of the other guys we've talked about. Kirk Cousins, go through them all. None of them excite me. Not a single one of them. I wish they did, but not a single one of them really excites me in so many ways because at the end of the day, I don't know that they're that much better than Mason Rudolph. I wish they were, but they're not. And let's be honest about it when we talk about it. When you think really legitimately about it from the standpoint of, is this guy good enough? Ask yourself, are they legitimately better options than Mason Rudolph? The answer is very simple. It's no, not at all. And so I want really, to be honest, I would love for the Steelers to go out and get another quarterback. I really believe that the only quarterback that's available out there to them that's good enough maybe to take a shot is Aaron Rodgers. And the reason is because Aaron Rodgers isn't going to cost them anything, period. That's what I would tell you. And I think that really, if you look at it that way, he's not going to cost a dime other than, 10, 15, $20 million he says he's going to, but he's not going to cost draft capital. He's not going to cost you anything. And so that's the end of the day. And I feel like it's always important to note that. Like, I feel like that when you look at this whole situation, we keep trying to bring up all these quarterbacks that we want the Steelers, that we want the Steelers to look at, and none of them are good enough. You know what I'm saying? That's the point. You can't just keep, thinking about bringing guys in because, oh, well, this guy's available or that guy's available or, this guy's going to be on the market or whatever. It's not going to work. It's not a good situation at all. So to me, I feel like it's one of those things where, you know what? We don't need Will Levis here. We don't need a whole lot of other guys that I keep hearing about here. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't come, I've already made it very clear. I really believe that Will Howard should be the guy. And if Will Howard's your guy, you don't need to bring somebody else in. Period. Let him sink or swim. I don't understand why it's so hard for some of these teams to let a guy sink or swim. If he sinks, then the Steelers will have a great draft pick next year. They can go out and get a quarterback. If he swims, then you've got your quarterback of the next 8 to 10 years. And at that point, you can go out and make the rest of your team better, period. And I think that's the thing about Will Howard. I've said I have interest in only two quarterbacks this year. That's it. One is Aaron Rodgers, and the other is Will Howard. I have no interest in Mason Rudolph. I like Mason Rudolph. Seems like a really good guy. Seems like a great teammate. Seems like somebody everybody loves. There's a ceiling to what he's capable of. And if there's a ceiling, why are we doing it? Period. If there's a ceiling, to me, you're just as good going with Will Howard as anybody else. And so I think that, honestly, when I read all of these reports and I read all of these articles about, guys the Steelers might be interested in, I have to laugh. Most of the time I have to laugh because most of the time I'm like, that guy doesn't make you better. Period. Does not make you better. And Will Levis was not good coming out of college, right? Classic example of a guy who was way overdrafted because why? He's got the measurables. His measurables are, what they are. But at the end of the day, he's got the measurables. But he doesn't have it here. Kirk Cousins is hurt. I don't care what anybody says. He's got a bad wheel, all that other good stuff. He's just really not very good. Period. So I look at it and I basically say, listen, when I take a look at all of the guys that have been available, there's only two that make sense. Will Howard and Aaron Rodgers. And if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come, the Steelers should put Will Howard as their starter. And if he's their starter, sink or swim with him. I know the Steelers are, in love with this idea that they have, what I would call the non-losing season streak and all that other good stuff. I get it. But to me, what difference does it make if you go 9-8, 10-7, or 8-9? To me, you've got to find out this year if you've got a quarterback of the future. And I think that's where we're at with Will Howard and where we're at with Aaron Rodgers. If you bring Aaron Rodgers in, obviously you're looking at trying to go out and win a Super Bowl or at least win in the AFC playoffs or whatever. That's what you're looking to do. But if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come, then what is your goal? My goal is, at least if I'm the Steelers, get to the point where next March or April or February or March, we're not sitting here talking about who is your quarterback. You either know Will Howard is it, or he failed spectacularly, and as a result of him failing spectacularly, you're able to go draft your guy in the top 5 or 10. That's what should be your goal if you're the Steelers. okay, we've got Aaron Rodgers. Let's take a shot at it. Let's see if we can get to the point where we win a Super Bowl. I don't know if you can or you can't. I don't know if you can even get to the Super Bowl. But it's your best chance of winning in the playoffs. Regardless of what you think about Aaron Rodgers, regardless of what you think about, who he is and what he is, and, you don't like him because of, all the reasons that he's polarizing, I'm okay with it. But at least be objective enough to take a look at all the situations the Steelers have talked about for the entire offseason and know that their best chance of winning this year is with Aaron Rodgers. Not with Russell Wilson, not with Justin Fields, not with Kirk Cousins, right? Their best chance of winning at a high level this year is if they had Aaron Rodgers, period. And I think that if they don't have him, I don't care if it's Mason Rudolph, Will Levis, who's the other guy? Kyler Murray, I guess, was one guy that was available apparently at one point. I don't care about any of that. I wish I did, but I don't. I think the most important thing is next year in February and March, do we know what the quarterback situation is? And if the quarterback situation is, hey, we've got a rookie that we're going to draft in the first round in the top 10 picks, I'm okay with it. It really is. You know what I'm saying? Period. And if it's not, then that means maybe Will Howard did a good job. All I'm saying is we are in a situation where I don't care about the non-losing season situation. I don't care about any of that stuff. I wish I did, but I don't. I want the Steelers to get back to being a contender. I want them to get back to being one of the teams that you look at and say they've got an opportunity to run the table in the AFC and maybe get to the the AFC Championship game. That's what I want from the Steelers. I'm just not in a place where I say, you know what, any quarterback is going to accomplish that. So that's why I say when I read these reports, and again, they're just reports, people are basically, listen, it's the off season. I get it. When it's the off season, people are always going to basically try and figure out, different storylines, and there's different narratives that they're going to go with. I get all that, right? But the reality of the situation is, if Will Levis is truly available, and of course, if you read the initial report, it said he is. And then after that, what did it say? Well, we're not sure he is because Tennessee isn't going to trade him. You know what I mean? So my point is, people need to have something basically to write about and say. I get it, and I understand it. But I just wish that when it comes to, when it comes to one of these things where you look at these off-season narratives, I hope the one that isn't true is necessarily that the Steelers are basically going to go out and sign somebody or trade for somebody just because they need a quarterback. Will Levis doesn't make them better. And anybody that watched Will Levis last year, to be honest, if I was Tennessee's general manager, I might have opted for Mason Rudolph instead. Now, they drafted Cam Ward, which means Will Levis's days are probably numbered. And I understand why there's reports as to why he would be available. But by the same token, you know what? You've got a rookie. And so if you've got a rookie, you might want to hang on to Will Levis. And I think that's what the storyline is. Basically, Tennessee right now is not interested in trading Will Levis because they want to make sure that obviously Cam Ward is their guy. It's one of those things where I just think in the offseason, what happens far too often is that people decide they need to have a narrative of some sort. And they go with it. And whatever it is, they decide, okay, We need, something today because we haven't had anything at all. And we're going to go from there. We're going to throw this out there. But the reality is, Will Levis, hey, whatever it is, Will Levis is available. And of course, if a quarterback is available, who's the first team people are thinking about? The Steelers. Because there's a lot of people that still don't believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to be their guy. I'm not one of them, by the way. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be their guy. I think every move they've made suggests to me that Aaron Rodgers is their guy. But at the end of the day, maybe he isn't. And if he isn't, there's a lot of people that want the Steelers to go out and get these guys like Will Levis. It makes no sense. And frankly, if you're Tennessee, you lost Mason Rudolph. Regardless of what happens with Cam Ward, you probably need to hang on to Will Levis. That's the key to me. You need two quarterbacks in this league. You need two guys who are capable of playing in this league. Period. I don't care what your situation is. You need two guys. Period. And so I feel like when you look at it like that, okay, Tennessee's not going to trade Will Levis. And look at all the guys that we've talked about. It's exhausting, actually, who might be available. Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, Kirk Cousins, right? It's clear to me the Steelers have had no interest in those guys because if they did, they would have traded for one of them. And they didn't. Be happy that Will Howard is here. Be happy that the Steelers are probably going to take a long look at Will Howard. Be happy, period. Because I don't think that if you look through, all the guys they're going to talk about that people want to connect the Steelers to, that want to, recycle all these guys. I don't know that any of them are as good as, as Mason Rudolph even. But I feel like we're in a situation where it comes down to this. Do you believe the Steelers, right, are in a place where they understand they're going to get Aaron Rodgers? That's where I'm at right now, by the way. I know we need things to talk about in the offseason. I know that there's a lot of narratives that need to be out there. I know there's a lot of stuff that people throw around. I get it. But to me, the most important thing about it is Will Levis or Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott or Kirk Cousins, doesn't matter who it is, the Steelers aren't going to trade for them. One, they're too expensive. Two, if they're not too expensive, they're going to cost too much in terms of picks. Three, I really believe the Steelers have the opportunity and understand they have the opportunity to get Aaron Rodgers. And while there's a lot of people that look at Aaron Rodgers as polarizing and maybe not that good, I completely disagree. I think he's going to be fine in a Steelers uniform. I trust the fact that the Steelers have a chance to get him. I believe that. I believe they're good enough to go get him. Period. And so it doesn't matter what happens. At the end of the day, I think Aaron Rodgers is a Steelers guy, and we've wasted a lot of time talking about other guys. By the way, the game is always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street. Archie's, home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. And when you get to Archie's, tell Archie I said hello. Tell him that I sent you. And also enjoy, there you go right there. Enjoy some of the best wings in Pittsburgh, as well as a number of other things. So get down to Archie's. Tell Archie I sent you. You know what? This Saturday they have the Kentucky Derby and everything else. So if you want to go down there, they're going to have the Kentucky Derby. They actually have a little Kentucky Derby party going on. I'm going to try and get to it. I don't know if my schedule will allow it, but I would like to get to it if I can, because it'll be a great thing. And of course, the Kentucky Derby every year. It's funny, when I was growing up, you know what? It's one of those things where when I was growing up, the Kentucky Derby was one of the best sporting events out there, period. Not a close second in some ways, right? But the reality is like everything else, boxing, what used to be great probably has lost some of its luster and all that other stuff. The Kentucky Derby still isn't quite what it should be, but it's still a pretty big event. And I'll be honest with you, when you watch it for 2 minutes, I mean, it's one of those things where I look at the Kentucky Derby and I just basically say, it's still to me a special event. So tomorrow, what I'll do is what I always do on Saturday of the Kentucky Derby. I'll hit the meadows and I'll probably go out and try and basically figure out, okay, who am I going to bet on? Right now, Citizen Ball, 20-1. Who is the favorite? And the thing about the Kentucky Derby is if you bet the favorite, you probably don't do very good. Looking at these odds, journalism, 3-1. I guarantee you I'm not betting on journalism, but 3-1. And then, of course, Sovereignty and Sandman, 5-1, 6-1. Tonight, I will probably really take a look hard and long at these horses and come up with who I think should win and who I want to bet on. A lot of times I'll go with a 20-1 or 31 odd. Of course, the one year there was 250-1 odds. I picked one, and the other guy, this was like 2 years ago, the other guy won. And had I bet the $100 on the other guy, I'd have won like $700,000 or some nonsense like that. Of course, I bet, because I what I always do is take a long shot and then two of the favorites, and I basically do a trifecta box, for like $100. If I would have bet the other 50-1 shot who actually won, I would have basically at that point won like $700,000. Instead, I bet the one that, I don't even know if they finished the race, but at the end of the day, they didn't finish in the top three, so I won nothing. But I was, this close to $700,000. So what I always say is take the two favorites or two of the three favorites, right? Do a trifecta box and put one of the long shots in there. And if the long shot wins or finishes in the top three, you got a chance to actually win some money. It's not always easy, but it's one of those things where tomorrow I'll drive down to the Meadows, which is one of the only places I know where you can actually bet the horse racing. And I will do something like that. I'll bet a couple of trifectas. I'll bet a couple of superfectas and all that other stuff. And I will basically do the best I can do. But again, 2 years ago, I was this close to like $700,000, which means I'll never be that close again. That's the way it goes. Anyway, tomorrow's the Kentucky Derby. You can get it. Go watch it at Archie's. One of the other things I wanted to get to real quickly was the fact that Mike Sullivan was hired by the Rangers. And, there's a lot of people that get excited about these kinds of things. They act like, well, the Penguins must have made a mistake because they fired a good coach and he got hired quickly. All I can tell you is this. Okay? The Penguins made the right decision. Mike Sullivan made the right decision. And as a result, the Penguins can go out now and actually rebuild. And Mike Sullivan can go out and obviously he's the coach of the Rangers and have a chance to win again. It's so hard to take a team like the Penguins who are rebuilding and try and go win. It's not easy at all, period. And I think Mike Sullivan understood that, and I think the Penguins understood they wouldn't be able to truly rebuild without Mike Sullivan. And the only reason I bring that up is because one of the biggest arguments that people make all the time about Mike Tomlin is that, well, if he gets fired, somebody's going to hire him in 10 seconds or less. To which I always say, that is not a reason to keep a guy in place. It's just not a reason. Never has been a reason. Period. If, you got a really good coach who's not winning anymore, then guess what you need to do? Get rid of him. Period. Get rid of him. And I think that one of the things that Penguins, understood, and Kyle Dubas even said this, was very simple. There's very, very few examples in all across sports of guys who won early in their careers, then went through a long wilderness of not winning, and somehow found it again and started winning again. It's not happening. That's my concern about Mike Tomlin. Yeah, he had a lot of magic his first 4 or 5 years, but guess what? 2010, since 2010, he's 3-9, I think, in playoff games? Is it realistic to think that he's going to find some magical formula? And if the reason you're keeping him in place is because, if we get rid of him, somebody else is going to hire him, who cares? And I mean that in all sincerity. Who cares? Worry about your own team. Stop worrying about who might hire Mike Tomlin if you get rid of him. And by extension, I guess in some ways we could say the same thing about Narduzzi and Jeff Capel and everybody else. You can't make a decision about who you're going to hire and fire based on the fact that, this guy is a really good coach and someone else is going to hire him. Who cares? Who cares? Doesn't matter. Penguins made the right decision. They'll go out and hire another coach, and guess what? If it's the wrong coach in 2 years, they'll fire him, and they'll find another guy. They're not going to be ready to win for 2 or 3 years anyway. Who cares? But it was time to move on from Mike Sullivan, because in moving on from Mike Sullivan, you can also now move on from this era of, we won some cups with these guys, and we want to continue to do it. Period. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. All right, fellas, we will talk to you on Monday. Hopefully, by then we know about Aaron Rodgers, but I'm not really all that optimistic. Until said time, stay out of trouble. Enjoy the Kentucky Derby. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.